Hello, everyone. It's Michael Jacob with Unleashing Intuition Secrets, joined once again by James Files and Jim Scott. We've all seen the JFK files released, but was there any resolution? Do we get any kind of insight? No. It's really up to us as a community to reveal this information, and who better than James Files, who was there on the day of the JFK assassination. We're going to go deeper into James Files' background and how he got committed to this group. We have talked offline several times, and I was at SEAL Team 6, which is like the premier SEAL team for America. Tier 1, and the stuff that James Files was doing was basically some of the stuff that some of the guys that I work with would go off and do certain jobs because they were tasked to do them. That's what James Files was. He was full time into that. So he was like me. They call you, you get up and you go. For me, I'm thinking this is like, I'm serving my country. He thought the same thing. He's serving his country. So we're going to go into that a little bit. So I know a lot of people, have issue with, how could you kill the president? Because he was tasked to do that by our government, right? A secret government, as we've all learned. And I could say the same things. A lot of stuff that I did over the years, I'm like, that's very suspect what they put me in tasked to do. But gentlemen, now the show is yours. We're going to let you do all the talking. I set the stage. You guys are both of you gentlemen are absolutely amazing. Thank you guys for sharing. We kind of have a little thing that we're going to go off of. Colonel Fletcher Prouty, U.S. Air Force, CIA Operation Mobile White Star. That's where we're kind of going to start off. But thanks for coming on. And wow, it's amazing.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, Jim. And Jim, thank you for. You came out to James's house, and that's amazing. Pamela is there. Maybe Pamela will pop in a little bit. James Files' wife, who got the primary target book. There she is. She popped in right there. There you go. Yeah. And so I highly recommend this book. I'm going to read a couple passages from that, which it blew me away, and it's probably going to blow you guys away. And let's jump in, gentlemen.
Let me start. One thing, just right from the top, we want the website to get the autographed first edition, either hardcover or softcover books are available. The only place you can get them autographed with the thumbprint on them is on their website. That will be announced during the show. The other thing too is they've had some problems in the past because of the extravagant cost of international shipping. Mm-hmm. If anyone watching the show is overseas or outside the continental United States, please order from Author House. And instead of ordering from the website, you can't really get an autographed copy because the shipping is like 3 times the cost of the book, and they can't do it for the money that's on the website. And but everyone should get a copy of this book. It's autographed by James. Really, and when the truth comes out, it's got his thumbprint in it that verifies it's his signature. And I believe this book is going to be worth a mint someday. Okay. So, but James wants to start off talking about Colonel Fletcher Prouty.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, with Colonel Fletcher Prouty, he was in charge of Operation Mobile White Star. And right before he was deceased, before he died, they interviewed him and they asked him if he knew me. And he said, yes, I was one of his men. And he elaborated a little bit, and he said the only thing he said, I was a good soldier, but the one thing he had against me was I was too much into overkill. But I like to get the job done.
That always blew me away, because I'm in my career I was like you. I went full bore, and sometimes that got me into trouble. But I like you, I got the job done, and so colonels, generals, admirals, they want us to do a certain thing. They want us to follow a certain script, but yeah, they hamper us a lot of times. So that's funny.
I got more letters reprimanding me than I did congratulating me on the jobs well done. I got reprimanded for some of them because I went too far.
Yeah, and you were like in Vietnam, and you were like an incredible operator in Vietnam.
Yeah.
We got a little trouble over there because again, you went far beyond the scope of what they wanted to control everybody. Yep.
Now, I wrote up my report, and I wrote my own. They were doing training for court martial for me, but I just told the facts on what happened.
So one of the reasons why you got into this group is because of your problems with the court martial, and so they kind of indoctrinated you into this group. And I know of other people over the years that I work with SEAL teams that would they get in a little bit of trouble, and then they kind of disappear. And I knew that they were going into different groups as well, and I would see them 10, 20 years later, and they would tell me, "Yeah, I was with this super high speed group," and I was like, "Wow!"
Like
But you were in that group.
We worked for the alphabet agencies. Worked for various agencies. And the whole thing was, you and I was maybe on a different level.
That's totally what it is, and I want everybody to be aware of that because in a lot of ways, James to me is like he's like the ultimate badass that I wish I'd been at some point. Of course, not killing, some of the people that he did. Now we look back on it, but they always charge us, to go after these people, and that's kind of where James and his group got caught up in. Now, going down further, Ted Shackley with the CIA. Tell us about him.
He had ran Operation Phoenix.
Operation Phoenix?
Yeah, the Phoenix program, which was nothing but an assassination group of the South Vietnamese government. And first we let out, we killed about 20,000, and then they went to 30. Finally, they got up to about 50,000. That's more accurate. That's how many people killed because they was against the South Vietnamese government. They talked about it. They ran it down or whatever. And anytime the Vietnamese government that's in the South there, they got teed up with somebody, we get orders to go out and eliminate this family.
Yeah, I knew guys when I first came into the SEAL teams that were part of that Phoenix program, and they told me some pretty crazy stories how they would go in and take some of their gear, like their RPGs, and they'd sabotage them so that when they fired, they'd blow up. All kind of crazy stuff. So, yeah, that's part of what the CIA programs are all about. Going in and doing all that stuff. Yeah.
And we try to blame it on the opposition that was fighting. We would do the job, even if it was killing our own people, and we'd turn it over. And the weapons we used, and we'd always leave a little bit of discrepancy behind to point to the rebels that we were fighting against.
Wow. So incredible, because when I would go overseas for the CIA, working in my capacity as basically security guy to protect the guys gathering information, I would go into different modes where I would camouflage put on shalwar kameez if I was in the Middle East, grow up my beard. If I was in Pakistan, I'd put on a mustache and glasses and a toupee, all kind of stuff.
With the population that was there.
Yeah. So you were able to blend in too, obviously. Wow. And so you're SEAL Team 6, CIA, so military industrial complex shift. That's where you were. You're deep into these programs, doing what like some of us would a little bit above you would be, wow, we wish we were in those programs. But you were recruited in those programs and obviously doing some crazy stuff. David Atlee Phillips, CIA recruitment.
He was my controller back then. Today they call them handlers. Back then they were controllers.
Yeah.
Early on with the CIA, we were known as cowboys.
Tell me you recruited David. You can guys.
David Atlee Phillips, he was a pretty nice guy. I like David Atlee Phillips. He was all right. And he's the one that woke me out of the Heinz Veterans Hospital there in Broadview, Illinois. And he put me abroad, and the first person I met was Frank Sturgis, who was the SAO. He was head of it. The SAO was a secret army organization for the Cubans that we were using. And Frank Sturgis was the Castro in the beginning. Frank Sturgis was head of security for Castro until Castro went fully communist, and then Frank Sturgis sold his services to the CIA.
Wow. Incredible. Now, in the book that you and Pamela worked on together, Primary Target, on page 178, you guys go into how the CIA told Cuban exiles they covered up lies. Right. So they had Cuban exiles, and they're telling them lies. So this is what was really going down. So you were asked a question about Castro and the CIA, and you said, let's go back to the time before JFK was president. Batista was in bed with organized crime. Right. So Batista was he was president in the 40s, I think, and then in the 50s up till Castro came in. So
came in about 58 or 59.
You're right. Okay. So Batista wanted a bigger cut in the heroin trade. Right. Now this blew me away. I'm like, heroin trade? Are you kidding me? So this is why they wanted to have Castro in there, because Batista was trying to get a bigger cut, and they're like, they took him out.
Castro, and they used the Isles of Buther. It's a chain of islands off the coast of Cuba, and that's where the heroin was processed at. That came from Burma, out of the Golden Triangle, and from there it crossed over the short peninsula to the Yucatan, and they traveled west on the Yucatan until they got into Mexico, right there, Mexico itself. Then it took a sudden radical turn and traveled north up to the United States. And that's when the heroin picked up the name Mexican Mud.
Wow. Unbelievable. So that was a big reveal for me, and it probably is for a lot of other people. So one of the reasons why they kept saying that Castro, assassination attempt by the CIA, no, that was just a cover because CIA put him in there. CIA kept him and said no more tourism because Cuba's a communist country. It was all a lie, all a ploy.
Yep.
So, and you said that was to keep the press out.
Keep the press out, journalists, and the tourists are coming over there and sticking their nose into something that didn't belong. They should have kept their nose out of, and they didn't want to make it public that the heroin was being produced and refined over there.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. That you're involved. So I can tell you that when I was in Afghanistan, worked for CIA, we're hunting terrorists, and then we had these guys come in that had worked. One of these guys was a Green Beret officer. He comes in and he's like, "Where's the drug dealers?" And we're like, "What?" It's like, so all the way back then, So now he's got a new job in Afghanistan. So they started to work.
The one that destroyed the poppy fields in the Golden Crescent there in the Middle East, in Afghanistan. And he had to pay for that himself. They made him pay for it and reimburse the farmers for it. Because the Green Beret was sent there to protect the poppy fields, not to destroy them.
Ah, wow. Interesting. So you even know about that program. I was like, oh, wow. So that's amazing that, you still have some connections, evidently, that have lasted quite some time. So now let's move to George Herbert Walker Bush, CIA operation of the 40 assassin training at Lake Pontchartrain in Louisiana. Tell us a little bit about that.
George Bush, he was a recruiter as early as I know of in 61 and 62. And Luis Posada Carrillas and myself, we were the first two recruited into Operation Group 40. Operation Group 40 was supposedly an intelligence gathering group. And that was the cover story. But actually, Operation 40 was a worldwide assassination group because there was nobody anywhere or any place that couldn't be had.
So this team basically consisted of mostly former military.
Former military, right?
So your guys are like a military team, just like I've been talking about. So I would have buddies that I work with. I know you on some of these assassination, where you went in and assassinated people or killed people. You work with a particular person a lot. That's the way I was throughout my career. I would be assigned someone that would be my shooting partner. We'd work a lot of stuff together, and I know you had some over the years. And
Right.
tell us about some of your, or one of the ones that was there during the JFK assassination.
I want to say Felix Rodriguez was there, but he was not a participant in the JFK assassination. If he was, I did not know about it. But we kept everything compartmentalized. So if anybody got captured, they couldn't tell on anybody else.
Yeah, so like when I was in the CIA, I was Kojak.
And quite a few of the people that in my circle, we worked together.
Orlando Bosch.
Orlando Bosch is another one. He was a good guy.
How about Chucky Nicoletti?
Charles Nicoletti was not CIA. He was strictly Chicago outfit. And I worked with him on several experiences in the Chicago area and surrounding area.
Okay, that's interesting. So I thought a lot of those guys that were the assassins for the mob were also part of the 40 assassin, but they were completely separate. Okay, gotcha. So that makes a lot of sense. So a lot of you guys are like working together on a lot of these different missions. Sometimes you would work with, this is the way I was when I was in the CIA working for them. I'd come in, it'd be sometimes new guys, sometimes guys I had never worked with before. How was it for you when you came into some of these operations?
Like Harvey Oswald, I met him. We were introduced. I was running guns to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. There, Lee Harvey Oswald would take over and he'd move them to New Orleans and get them aboard one of the ships there. And we were sending guns to Haiti to Papa Doc. When Papa Doc passed on, we continued to run guns to Baby Doc.
So, Jim Scott, you can jump in anytime too, and add some commentary if you want, because I know your depth of insight on this stuff is far deeper than a lot of people will ever get. So, if you have anything you want to add or ask any questions, feel free as well.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground so far, and some of the key points that I wanted to make was that James, he worked for the CIA for 28 years and did a lot of black ops, really deep black ops, involving the operations we've talked about before, including, I've sent you some pictures, Che Guevara, the execution of Che in Bolivia. And, there's a picture of James with the operation, the only known photograph to exist for the Operation 40 group. It was taken in January of '63 at the La Luna Hotel. It's on the cover of this book, Barry and the Boys. If you look up Operation 40 under Wikipedia, this photograph appears, but James is the third person on the left. They can't see that.
Can't see it. Okay.
If you'll pull that picture up where it says Operation 40, all right, so pull that picture up if you would, the Operation 40 picture.
Okay.
And he's got the picture right there.
And so James is the third person on the left. I think on a previous show that you and I did, I misspoke. The guys on the right side, I said it was Felix and Barry and Porter, but it's Felix and Porter, and Barry's the third one, Barry Seal, the pilot. James flew with Barry Seal a lot. In fact, many loads of contraband into Mena, Arkansas, but that's jumping ahead in the story. That's it. It's the top one on the left, if you can pull it up.
It wasn't pulling up very, very good. Let me get out of that picture and see if I can get a better one.
Okay. But if people can see the picture, if they just look up Operation 40 on Wikipedia, and it's the only known photograph. It was taken in January of '63 at the La Luna Hotel in Mexico City. James is the third person on the right.
I'm sitting next to Frank Sturgis.
Frank Sturgis has got his coat pulled up over his head. He actually, that picture to me, it looks more like Tosh Blomley, but he would know better than me that it was. There it is. The third person on the right is James Files. On the left, the three people I named, the last, there he is. If you want, with the X on him, he's holding the drink in his right hand. And so if you on the scan back a little bit, on the left side of the picture is Felix Rodriguez, and then Porter Goss, and then the pilot Barry Seal. That was the story about in the movie American Made with Tom Cruise about flying the guns to Nicaragua and the cocaine back to Mena, Arkansas, with the CIA and the Clintons and the Bushes and all that stuff. But that guy leaning over with the cigarette in his hand laughing, that's Felix Rodriguez. He was the one that the CIA officer that James was with in Bolivia when they captured Che Guevara. And the second guy with his head turned to the left, where you can see the right side of his face, that's Porter Goss. And he was the director of the CIA under George W. Bush for a period of time. So he's an original Operation 40 assassin. Third guy, Barry Seal. And I guess Barry was a pilot back then, too. Yeah. And James says Barry's the best pilot he ever flew with. So I'm not sure who the Cubans are in the back. I think in that picture on the website, Spartacus, it identifies them as something. I think they actually on that website, I can't remember it. I don't know if it's Sergio Castillo, which is one of his aliases, or and it seemed like it said something like Blanco, Loco Blanco, or something like that, which would be crazy white guy. Yeah, there you go. That's James in front of his poster that was here, the American Made Tom Cruise movie poster. And that was Barry Seal, James, and the other crew that were flying. They had a C-123, I think it was a K model, old reciprocating engine cargo Air Force plane, camouflage. It was called the Fat Lady. They flew missions from Central America into Mena, Arkansas, loads of cocaine for the CIA, the Clintons.
So you had heroin coming in through Cuba, and through Mena Airport, you had heroin or cocaine and drug or weapons and human smuggling too, right?
Right.
Wow. So you're on some of those flights with them, right?
Right. And sometimes I flew my own plane. It wasn't my plane. The plane belonged to the agency. But
Right.
It's not a fictitious name, and it's one of the old DC-3s that I flew, which would be a C-47 military number. DC-3 in American numbers.
So you flew too?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Oh my God. Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
I learned how to fly when I was in the house on Operation Mobile White Star. Pop Buell from Iowa, he was the one that taught me how to fly.
Nice. Yeah, we had a lot of SEALs and Green Beret, basically Delta, and SEAL Team 6 guys that would learn how to fly.
Yeah.
And we would do operation with them flying and Cessnas and all that kind of stuff. So that's interesting that you became a pilot to move a lot of this stuff as well, because you're already in the program. They know they can trust you, and you'll do what you're told pretty much, and you're flying to stuff all over, thinking you're doing it for the American government and to save people, save lives, and all that kind of stuff. The kind of same thing that all of us do it for. It's crazy.
It's like a book, Primary Target. I didn't want to really go with that part of it. My wife wanted to put it in the books, and she was writing it together. And it's the first book we did together with me out of prison. The first two books we did, I was in prison. We've got in there my birthing program, and it tells how I come to be what I was. And from day one, I was born, my mother was like government property.
Wow, that's incredible. So
I was attended Camp Hero, and some of the people have heard of Camp Hero. A lot of people have never heard of it, and they didn't know what all went on there.
Tell them where it is.
It's in Montauk, Long Island, New York.
So I have a picture of your family. It's a good looking picture. Let me share that with everybody.
Yeah, it's you have a picture of my family. They had to be
a little boy.
Okay, I was real young. That was my mother, and that was my stepfather, Pat Brazil, and I was never adopted by him. But
that was in Melrose Park.
Yeah, that was in Melrose Park. I was born with an X number for a name. Then I went from that to Jimmy Sutton, and from that I went to Jimmy Files. And the reason I changed my name from Sutton to Files was because of a lot of radical Cubans that I had worked with. And my own safety and protection of my family. I wasn't worried about myself, but it's my family that I was worried about. Not my mother
Yeah.
and my father, so to speak, but when I married my oldest daughter's mother.
So were you the only child?
No, I had a sister.
And a brother.
I had a half brother, I guess you'd call it. I shot him in the Yucatan and left his body there. And my sister, her husband killed her in 59. He shot her with a 12-gauge shotgun with double up at 4.5-foot range.
Mary Pearl and Art Johnson shot her.
So
Wow,
that was
so crazy.
And me was the only two of my original by my mother.
Except for Hank,
No.
that
He
you
was the
killed.
only half brother, yeah.
But your sister was half sister too.
No, she was a full sister.
No, because you didn't know your dad.
Well, I didn't know my dad, but my
Because
sister.
you're in the Navy birthing program.
Yeah, my sister, I considered her my full sister, and was head of my mother. So.
I know, but I do genealogy, understand these things, and she was your half sister too.
But anyway, I had a messed up life. I never really had a family together until I till I got married, and then my oldest daughter, and there was my actually, it's a long story. I won't even go into it. Then when I got married again later on, I had this other one was my youngest daughter. That's the end of that there.
Wow. So it sounds like maybe there were some, like you're talking about, you were groomed from an early age, and then
Right.
other family members.
I started attending Camp Hero.
Hey,
So yeah, that's incredible.
I learned how to go at an early age.
she put you on the Greyhound bus
Yes.
and you'd go there
We
for
don't got to go
months.
through all that.
6 months at a time.
Wow.
He was trained as an assassin as a child.
And I also attended the School of Americas in Georgia. We had 3 schools. We had one in South America, one in the Central Hemisphere, which is Central America, and one in Georgia. But when we didn't call the countries. We said Southern Hemisphere, which is South America. We worked the Central Hemisphere, which is Central America. The Northern Hemisphere is North America. So we had 3 hemispheres. But we didn't call them by name. We just said, yeah, the Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, one of the others. Somebody asked where we sat.
The world was the playground.
Incredible. So yeah, they're basically doing this from a very, very early start, American's history.
It was on the Germans. The Nazis were trying to create the perfect Aryan soldier when the United States was doing the same thing. And the birthing program was in Mobile, Alabama.
But tell them about the people
Wow.
that didn't make it and where you think they went in the Brookhaven.
Well, 123 people attended my birthing program. We was all born the same year, and only 14 of us out of Camp Hero graduated. What happened to others, I don't know. But they may have been used as experiments at Brookhaven laboratories. I don't know.
That's amazing. So when were you born? What year?
1942, January 24th.
Okay. So obviously
the
the Nazi programs are already here.
Pardon me?
The Nazi birthing programs are already here.
Yeah.
Wow, crazy. Because we know the connection with George Herbert Walker Bush with the Nazi families. When he was young, he would go. They would travel to Germany, and there's pictures of him with some of the who would be eventually generals in the German army. So incredible. Wow, I had no idea.
About George Bush Sr. I alluded to that exact same thing you're talking about. He doesn't even know about it. God bless him.
I went where I was told to go and did what I was told to do.
Yeah.
Same with the government, the same with the Chicago mob. And when you get to the organized crime and government, it's hard to tell the difference between the two of them.
There you go.
One of my first interviews, Confession of an Assassin, they asked me, who would you rather work for, the government or the mob? And I said, well, the government gives you a medal and they tell you a job well done, successful, etc., etc. With a mob, you do the job, they hug you and they kiss you on both cheeks, and they stick an envelope stuffed full of money in your coat pocket. I said, you figure it out. Who pays the best?
So that, I mean, that's the way
I
it
grew up
was.
inside the mob in Melrose Park, Illinois.
And you didn't even know about the Vatican or the whole Catholic hierarchy?
No, I didn't really care about any of that.
You didn't know about any of it?
Wow, this sounds like there's a lot of rabbit holes in a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, as far as like the Bush, being involved, how involved was he in the training of the 40 assassins?
He recruited.
I wouldn't say he was involved in the training. He was more involved in recruiting, and Frank Sturgis did most of the training.
Gotcha.
Because Frank Sturgis was a special breed type of warrior. He was a type of warrior that everybody wanted to be. He was a good guy.
He was tested.
Yeah, tough. Sounds like a really tough guy, and talk the talk and walk the walk. So that's always going to attract respect. So that's good. That's good. Now we have
We're going to play Operation Zipper on the JFK assassination, and I think Jim would be better explaining that. And I'll catch my breath in the meantime.
okay.
Jimmy, take a break for a second. And one of the things that I want to do, if we go back to the original list that we have in our agenda, is to show that there is a definite, track that it's all this is the CIA. It starts out with Fletcher Prouty running these programs, and his Jimmy joined the Army like on his 17th birthday.
Yeah, 17th birthday.
He goes in the Army. He deploys to Laos. He's working with L. Fletcher Prouty. By the way, Colonel Prouty's daughter, Lauren, is one of my neighbors. And I didn't find that out until a few years ago. And she gave me, you remember that in the movie JFK, Donald Sutherland, who recently died, played Mr. X. And, he talked about why did they send, he said he was playing the part of L. Fletcher Prouty. And he said, why did they send me to the South Pole, during the Kennedy assassination? He was the liaison between the Department of Defense and the CIA. Well, they knew Fletcher Prouty wouldn't go along with it. I want you to make a comment about that.
Fletcher Prouty was strictly by the rules book man. He would not break the rules or bend the rules. And Lansdale, he'd bend the hell out of him, or he would even break them to get the job done. But Fletcher Prouty would not do that.
So I'm talking with Lauren Prouty, and she goes, I have something that you should have. And she gives me this little wooden penguin. It's like you hang it up and you can pull a chain on the bottom of it and the penguin's wings flap. It's a little handmade wooden toy. But on it, it's painted South Pole, November 18th through the 19th, 1963.
Wow.
And Lauren gave me that. She said, my dad brought this toy back for me from the South Pole in November of 63.
Wow.
And I asked her, I said, did you get to, because she was involved with the filming of the movie JFK. And she went with her father to, a lot of the sets and things like that. And Fletcher Prouty wanted the movie to be done right. And he was a consultant to the movie. He wrote the book, JFK. They made the book that was, the movie with Kevin Costner from that book, JFK. Yeah. And Lauren tells me, she just mentioned, she said, the other book that's really good, this L. Fletcher Prouty, is The Secret Team. And she said, I typed both of my father's books. He typed with his index fingers. He couldn't type. And she typed both of the manuscripts for the books. And I asked her, so, here I've got somebody that's a pretty well-known, role in this. And she lived with him for all these years. And I asked her, I said, what happened to his professional papers and all that kind of stuff? And she said, my brother has them. And he's still alive. I'm not going to disclose his name or identity or all that stuff. But, I haven't been able to, I haven't had the opportunity to go through that stuff. But so Fletcher Prouty is, you know, the key role. And then as it flowed down from there, and the recommendation from Ted Shackley and David Atlee Phillips and George H.W. Bush, and to the point we're here now of, you know, talking about Dallas, all this is CIA stuff. This is not the Chicago Mafia deciding to shoot President Kennedy. You know what I mean? Just willy-nilly out of the blue. Right. So the bottom line is that the connection with James Files in the Operation 40 photograph, and then if you want to bring it up, the picture of Felix Rodriguez and Che Guevara, and that's in October of '67, and the CIA guys call that No Che Day, and it's like a day they celebrate. I think it's October 9th, '67, and but James may want to make a couple comments about that operation. But when you've got his picture with the Operation 40 group in Mexico City in '63, and his picture standing behind Che Guevara in '67, who wants to argue? Now, there are going to people, you know, the motto of the CIA, and I know you know it from being SEAL Team 6, is deny everything, admit nothing, make counter accusations, right? And when necessary, take hostages. So, but if you've got a picture of him in '63 in Mexico City and a picture of him in Bolivia with Felix Rodriguez executing Che Guevara, who is to say, oh, he's not really a CIA black ops assassin? I mean, what other proof would you need? You know what I mean? So you've got the crime of the century, and we've talked about this on other videos, but I want to review it really quickly. When I was a state trooper in Virginia, I saw his confession of assassin video after renting it at Blockbuster, which is ironically, I was talking to Pam earlier today, and she said, that's exactly how I found out about it. And so you got this confession, and I said, well, I believe. I'm looking at him, and I believe he's telling the truth. So I skipped my chain of command and talked to a first sergeant and say, what I'd like to do is
I think I did the pictures up there now.
What I'd like to do is look into this, because Johnny Roselli probably had meetings in Virginia with the CIA and everything. So that's a crime that the Virginia State Police can look into. First sergeant apparently contacted a lieutenant at the headquarters of the Virginia State Police, and about not long after that, they found him in the woods behind his house, dead, and said that he committed suicide.
Yeah, right.
Right. So I don't, you know, I can't say that the FBI or the CIA or some other mercenary or whatever killed this Virginia State Police lieutenant, but it looks awful fishy to me. And the rumors that I've heard, and we talked about this in detail on previous videos, you know, it seems like, you know, and this was in December of 1998, you know, they're still killing people to cover up the Kennedy assassination, you know, and I don't want to be the next one. And I know James doesn't either, but you know, his confession's been out there how long? Geez, over 30 years.
30 years.
You know, so they can't see that.
No, they're JFK dead witnesses. There's a lot of people that have died trying to tell the truth about this.
Right.
God bless them, you know, because they died standing for the truth.
Yeah, so the bottom line is this whole story is linked from the beginning to the CIA. And there's a lot of people that say that the biggest event that occurred in the history of the United States that was the beginning, if you will, or maybe the public beginning of the deep state taking control of our country, not as the CIA, but the minions that they work for. You know what I mean? The big corporations and all that. It seems to me the CIA is not really working for the people of the United States, that they're really just an armed Title 50 extrajudicial lean green killing machine, you know, like they talk about Marines, for American corporations. And
well, that's kind of what it sounds like. It got hijacked with Colonel Fletcher Prouty when they sent him down to Antarctica,
right?
So they could basically take James's crew and use them for the assassination.
Yeah, let me jump forward just for 1 second and tell the people that have never heard this before or been on the call. And Eric Prince, the guy that was a founder of Blackwater, former Navy SEAL, you probably met Eric.
Yeah, I put him through training. I worked with Blackwater for a while. Yep.
Yeah, great guy. All right, but he disclosed that when the CIA took control of Afghanistan after Tora Bora, that one of the biggest things they did was they put Hamid Karzai in the president's seat in Afghanistan. Well, what was Hamid Karzai doing, before they made him the president of Afghanistan? He was running a hot dog stand on the mall in Washington. Why does that guy need to be the president of a country? The reason why is his brother, Walid Karzai, was the biggest opium dealer in Afghanistan. That's when they look it up, Walid Karzai. It may have even been his half brother, but I think toward the end of the war, and it even says that if you look it up on Wikipedia and stuff like that, that he was on the CIA's payroll, and that's who was running the big loads of opium out of Afghanistan for 20 years. And that seems to me that's what it's all about, is drugs and dirty money, And not only that, but it supports the military-industrial complex, all those bombs and airplanes and all that stuff they bought and all that money they wasted, and then just walked away from it and left it over there, billions of dollars worth of arms and even cash. Have you ever seen the picture of the vault that they had the cash in? It's about 5 or 6 feet deep and probably 4 feet wide of piles of $100 bills, wrapped hundreds. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just, they just walked away from everything. You would have thought that they would at least distributed that to the troops. Here's $10,000. Thanks for coming. They just left that stuff behind for the Taliban. I mean, crazy. But so the whole connection between Afghanistan and Laos and all those kind of things and the CIA, a lot of it is illegal drug operations. So, and sitting right here beside me is, one of Barry Seal's co-pilots and a guy that, was involved in that kind of stuff.
There's been many books written about this whole situation, The Crimes of the Patriots, True Tale of Dope, Dirty Money in the CIA. This is back in the 80s. People are trying to warn. It's a book
they can't see it on the screen.
Withdrawn from the library.
It's too small.
I'm just saying.
Okay, so
this history is out there.
Back to the CIA, and what do you want to have to say about the opium from Laos and all this whole thing?
Well, the Golden Triangle was in Bermuda, and then over there in Afghanistan, we had what they call the Golden Crescent.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the opium kept coming from there, and was being processed. It was still being processed outside of Cuba there in the Isles of Youth and transported into the USA. From Vietnam, we flew a lot of the heroin in from there via Air America. It was flown inside bodies of the soldiers that died. And that was called the China Trail.
Yeah, they were doing the same thing from Afghanistan too, from what I've heard. So that's interesting. So they were flying the same heroin like they were using from Laos and Vietnam area, Golden Triangle through Cuba. They were doing the same thing with Afghanistan, flying it from into Cuba again. Still using Cuba. Wow.
Yeah, still using Cuba.
Oh my God. During that time frame is where we had a huge.
No, I've been on the circle for quite a while, but with a good thing going, I don't see why they would get rid of it. It was just like Camp Girl. They've got a fence around the place, and it says restricted. Trespassers will be arrested. And Jesse Ventura, he tried to do an article on it. He went there and he got run off. Somebody showed up. They had no identification, no tags on him or nothing. But he was informed to get out of there before they shot him. I figure the place is still being used.
Wow. So, yeah, there's a comment in the Afghanistan was a drug war. They just rearranged the triangle. Yeah. Now, I saw evidence of this. There's a lot of people that talked about that, but I had no idea they were running it through Cuba. That's a huge reveal right now. Yeah, so I
right there, where it got processed, refined right there, and turned it into.
Unbelievable.
And the other thing too is, and I want to say, I can't remember the other one, but there was a couple of ships owned by George H.W. Bush. One was named Barbara after his wife, and supposedly those boats were running drugs to the oil rigs in the Gulf of America now. And then the oil rig workers, both the helicopter flights and the boats that transport them back and forth from Louisiana and Florida and the other place, Mississippi, out to the oil rigs and come back. They're not checked by customs. No. They just come and go, take whatever they want. And that's how the Bushes apparently, and you can imagine when George was the president and George W. was the governor of Texas and Jeb was the governor of Florida, how many illegal drugs came in this country?
No kidding.
Can you imagine?
Wow. Good point. Holy moly.
Yeah.
One of the landing places in Florida was Venice Airport. And Jeb Bush got, I don't remember, somebody found in there, they picked up a couple of kilos of cocaine because they was having a party.
Jeb and George Bush Jr. were seen taking the drugs off a plane in Venice, Florida.
Really?
We used to fly in there.
Yeah.
Daniel Hopsicker.
And come into Florida, we used to cut up underneath the belly of one of the either United or Dell or whatever flight it might be, big passenger airline. We would fly right up underneath it, so we wouldn't show up as a separate blimp on the radar.
Mm-hmm.
And cross through the ADIZ, which is an open gate that's 5 miles wide. We used to hit the service and go to the ground and try to get the runway immediately to get the plane where we could get the DEA there.
Did Barry Sale teach you that trick?
Yeah.
It's and today.
Why did Pillsbury Seal? I have it from someone else that they thought that he was skimming.
They made a movie on Barry Seals, and I was very disappointed in the movie. They made him out to be the largest drug dealer in the world, and he wasn't. He was just the best pilot.
You're blocking Jim's face.
Yeah. Interesting. So they just made him scapegoat, kind of like
Yes.
like they do with.
He got the family. It was a plane. It was barred to the CIA by the DEA. Barry Seals flew the plane for the DEA where they cut holes in the wings and the amount of cameras there on the wings. And they filmed all the bases, all the landing strips and the drug bases where we stopped at and everything else. And when the plane was going back to the CIA from the DEA, they didn't tell us where the plane had been used at, so they put it to flying. And I think Cook was the pilot on it. Eugene Happenfuss, he was a kicker on the plane, and he had gotten a parachute from Homestead, Florida, which was not allowed to have aboard the planes. And when the rebels saw the plane after the court cases and everything started, they saw the plane flying over. They shot down the fat lady, and Happenfuss was parachuted out, and he was the only survivor. And they took him as prisoner. Well, I was doing federal time at that point in Wisconsin. And I had a couple of people from the agency come see me there, and they wanted to know about it because that was where we were shot down was one of my old theater of operations. And they asked me, what should they do? And I told them, I said, get Eugene out of there as fast as you can. I said, because he will talk. He's weak. He won't hold up. I said, and if you can't get him out, I said, terminate. You have to terminate. And they didn't do it. So Eugene, he spilled his guts to the world on television, going to trial and everything else.
Crazy stuff.
But anyway, the DA would have told the CIA they'd use the plane to film all the drug bases. We would have never used that plane back in the Central Hemisphere. We had to move it overseas somewhere. Because of the planes we have plenty of airplanes.
Yeah, it's I realize the CIA has its own fleet of ships and its own fleet of aircraft.
America was one of the world's largest airlines.
Wow.
And the Congress wanted it sold off, and it was sold off by a lawyer by the name of William Sandlett, and it was sold off at $1 a share with the lending rights at the different airports. And they went from Air America to different names like Essential Air Transport, which we call CAT, and several other names of it.
Yeah. I think Evergreen was they were doing some stuff too for the CIA.
Evergreen, was based out of Arizona.
Yeah.
Arizona.
And we actually used to, when I was at SEAL Team 6, we would jump at that air base. I'm not going to name it, but we would jump there, and all the guys were like, "That's the CIA."
Yeah.
Evergreen. I was like, "Oh."
They kind of gave us the wide path to walk down.
So they make here you guys are serving, you believe, and I know that Bush at one time when he was the head of the CIA told you guys that if you ever get in trouble, he's going to send a plane within 24 hours to pick you up. And then you see
whatever we needed, he'd have it to us. If it could be moved by airplane, he'd have it to us in 24 hours.
So that's kind of counter when you see Barry Seals get shot in the back of the head twice, and they say it's suicide. And I don't know.
Barry Seals wasn't shot. Excuse me, Barry Seals wasn't shot in the back of the head. Barry Seals was gunned down at the halfway house in Baton Rouge, I believe it was Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and they fired over 100 rounds into his white Cadillac. And when Barry seen him coming, he just laid his head down over the steering wheel, and he just took it.
Knew there was no way out, huh? Wow.
Me, I would have had the car started in reverse, and I wouldn't have been looking at what I was backing into. I could care less if I ran over people or ran into cars or whatever. I'd have been trying to get out of there.
Now, Lee, I'm gonna play a little clip from Lee Harvey Oswald when they got him, where he declares, "I'm just a patsy," and I think that's very.
Think about it. That's the smartest thing he could say there in the theater. When he hollered, "Don't shoot! I give up! I surrender!"
Wow.
Because that way the cops, he figured they wouldn't kill him with right there with that many witnesses. So they walked him out of the theater alive. And then that's when he started yelling when he got into the station lockup that he was a patsy.
You gonna play that?
Yeah, I'm just playing now. Just getting there.
Listen.
Legal representation of these police officers are not allowed me to happen. I don't know what this is all about. Sir, I work in that building. Naturally, if I work in that building, yes, sir. No, they're taking me in because of the fact that I live in Missouri. I'm just a
So I'm just a patsy, and just like we were talking about before, he had a story. When I was overseas working for CIA, you have a story. You stick to your story. You lie. You stick to your story. You die. I've done it many times. And then, of course, I had to do the lie detector. I couldn't lie to the CIA, but I could lie for them everywhere else.
When we go to another country, yourself, you had to blend into the crowd, and you didn't tell them why you was there. And you didn't walk in there and say, "I'm the CIA and I got an operation to do here, so leave me alone." You don't tell them that. No, you go in there and you blend and you make a disguise, grow a beard or let your hair grow out long or whatever. Like me, one of my best covers was I'd get real old clothes that went to that country and I'd stick around with a paper bag with a bottle in it and make like I was drunk. And speak all the languages. I'd take a razor and I'd cut my throat here a little bit, get a little blood there, sort of run out, spread it around, put a bandage over and tape it around. And people try to talk to me. I'd hold my mouth and I wouldn't say nothing. And I'd just point at my neck where I was operated on. And people would leave me alone.
Brilliant. Wow. And plus you're you're drunk and you're homeless and you're dirty. So you're a pariah. So no one's going to talk to you.
My clothes before I'd put them on and they'd sneak to high heaven and back, and I'd be dirty, grow a little bit of a beard of whiskers, and nobody wanted to talk to me because I smell so bad.
Brilliant. Yeah. So we've all played those parts. Yeah, we play the parts, and we get away with some crazy stuff.
Now, one restaurant, someone call the name of the country, but I was at the one restaurant. And I was trying to recruit people. I had a meeting for that night. before I go to the meeting, I'd go into my role as a drunk and this and that, and I'd get a dumpster and move it over beside the wall of the restaurant, and I'd plant explosives there and make a doorway. Because if I'm recruiting and all of a sudden this secret police come running in on me, I got no choice but to make an exit. So I blow the bomb. I didn't give a shit who was around. I blow the bomb and make a hole in the wall, and I'd escape that way.
Wow.
I have to use it. The next day, I'd go back there and I'd play the role of drunk again. I'd lay around in the alley, and nobody's around. I'd reach up in there and I'd get the explosive out from underneath the dumpster by the wall and tear it back and put it away until I needed it later. I didn't leave any traces behind.
Crazy.
There's some very early Harvey Point breaching training for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Lee Harvey Oswald, he didn't do any shooting.
He never fired a shot. And the only nitrates, I've got a parapet test in the back, I believe, is primary target. In the back of that book that shows it's an actual court document from the police station where Lee Harvey Oswald had no nitrous on his cheeks or on his neck or anything else. And the only place in his hand, he had him in the palm of his hand. That was where he picked up the brass string when I was calibrating the scopes out at Mesquite, Texas, where I was taking the lamplighter in. You remember the old lamplighter ends, I imagine, don't you? The guy who had the candle and the tray and he had on a nice shirt.
Yep.
That was their advertisements.
We spent the 5 days before the assassination with Lee Harvey Oswald. Lee showed him around, and he ran a bunch of errands with him and things like that. And I asked James before, did you know that the agency was going to use Lee as a patsy for the thing? And he said no. So it wasn't part of the setup or anything.
Lee and I never discussed the John F. Kennedy assassination. We never discussed it. He showed me the streets, one ways where the railroad crossings was. We found out what times the trains crossed there. We had all the local information because I went there as a weapons bearer and a driver. I did not go there as a shooter. I was assigned a shooter the day of the assassination, and that was by Lansdale. Because I did Lansdale before, and I didn't miss.
Would this be a good point to digress to the? We've talked a lot about the initial CIA support and the weapon that was used, the Remington XP-100 chambered in .221 Fireball, was issued by David Atlee Phillips. But to let Jim explain what happened actually in the span of 15 minutes or a couple hours, maybe if you want to go back to 10 o'clock or so before the assassination, talk about from when Chuck and them were walking around to what happened. If he can explain that to your audience, people that have never heard it. But I mean, this is a unique opportunity. People watching this show realize that the man sitting beside me is the guy that killed John F. Kennedy.
And right before that, early that morning, me and Johnny Roselli drove him to the Old South Pancake House in Fort Worth, Texas. And we met with Jack Ruby there. And Jack Ruby gave him a 5x8 envelope, vanilla envelope, with the Secret Service badges in it and the other identification. The change of the route. And the change of the route, the only was, instead of going round and down Main Street under the viaduct, went down Elm Street. They slowed the vehicle down to where they figured we'd have a good shot at it. And the time I spent with Lee Harvey Oswald, he was no dummy. He was a genius as far as I'm concerned. He had a very high IQ. And Chuck and me walked the morning to the Plaza, and Chuck asked me if I would okay with being his backup. And I told him I'd be honored to be your backup. And I asked him what happened to Johnny, and he said, well, they got a abort team flying in. They allegedly want to stop it. But the truth about the matter was with the abort team was they wanted them there in case we blew the operation on killing Kennedy. Then the abort team could take the credit for saving Kennedy's life. And the CIA would look good. And somebody else going with him. And they were there that morning and they watched it all. I ended up being the backup shooter and I was on the grassy knoll. Johnny Roselli was the Charles Nicoletti, was in the doctor's building on the second floor of the corner office building there. And Johnny Roselli was picking up the brass from the rifle from Chuck's gun.
So here's a picture of you with the weapon, and behind you is like a little briefcase that you had the weapon in,
Right.
and you were wearing some kind of a jacket or something that you reversed after you did the shooting. Tell us a little bit.
It was a dress jacket, but the inside of the dress jacket was a flannel lining, just red and white squares, and just like a railroad worker would use. And the jacket, the reverse side looks like a railroad worker in the yard. I had a piece of chalk, and I'm just marking numbers down on boxcars because I'm walking along like I belong there. And anyway, she just brought me the fedora. The fedora is one hat that I wore that morning at behind the picket fence.
It's not the hat, but it's
it's
like
not the hat, but it's like that. And, anyway, it all went
So
down. What
about the round itself and the make of the round, and you can see the. Did you shoot it with one hand like that?
One hand, yeah. One hand's all I needed.
That's impressive.
Michael, let me also say that this picture was a reenactment that was done in 2020. A couple people had stolen those slats from the actual original fence. I called the guy. It's a long story, but he actually told me when we were in a conversation. He goes, we were visiting Dealey Plaza with my father and my brothers and all this stuff one year, and my father stole one of those slats from the fence. The guy actually told me, and he said he still got it somewhere in his garage. And I told him I'd pay him for it if he'd sell it to me. But anyway, that picture actually was taken in 2020. That's a Remington XP100 stock of a later model that was done in black. The original one was a brown Zytel, like hard plastic. I sent a picture if you want to pull the picture up of the weapon. And it was a single shot bolt action pistol chambered in .221 Remington Fireball. And that picture showing James holding the stock over the fence. Since he's a convicted felon, he can't have a weapon, with him. So it was just a stock. So any FBI agent watching this thinks he's going to get James for a violation or something. There's no point in that. But that's the original gun looked like that. It had a 3-power Leopold M7 3-power scope, and it had the Leopold Detacho mounts. However, it did not have, for the Kennedy assassination, that brown Zytel stock. Wolfman, a fellow named George Calora, a former Marine armorer that took care of the weapons for the mafia, had equipped the pistol with a wooden stock that has finger grips on the, actually grooves for James's fingers. It was fitted to James, but the stock was replaced with a wooden stock. That pistol there belongs to me. It's in my collection. And I had him autograph the case and the pistol. And I've got 3 more of them here with me now at James' house that he's going to autograph after this show that I'm going to take and add to my collection. But that's basically the weapon that was used in the Kennedy assassination. Factory ammo, it came in a box. This is an original box. I don't know if you can see it very well.
Yep.
Let me turn it over. Remington.
We got Remington.
Big green color. It's marked on the end. .221 Remington Fireball. It was a 50 grain bullet, and the cartridge, and I'm holding this up, it's about it might be 2 inches long. 50 grain bullet at about 2,700 feet a second, 2,650, something like that.
That's incredible. That's like a rifle round in a pistol. Amazing.
Yeah. And it was. We want to clarify one point. You want to go ahead and talk about that a second, about the cartridge, the caliber?
Okay, you go ahead and explain it.
Okay, so there's a lot of there's history behind this. Jim explained in the beginning when this round was developed by Wayne Leake at Remington Arms that the Darling cartridge back then that bench rest shooters used that was super accurate. In fact, Mac McMillan of the McMillan brothers, he set the world record in 1973, about 10 years after this, with a 222 Remington. It was basically 5 shots through the same hole. And that was the bench rest cartridge. But shot in a 10 3/4 inch barrel bolt action pistol, it had a really big fireball in front of it. And supposedly Remington had issues with the barrels. I guess if they did that dye penetration test or something like that, that there were stress fractures or something like that in the barrel, plus this big fireball from that 222 cartridge, it didn't burn all the powder. So Remington developed the shorter cartridge, the 221 Remington Fireball. It's much shorter, smaller powder capacity. And James had Wolfman, his friend George Calora, who took care of the Mafia weapons, basically did a handmade bullet that had mercury in it. And that's another key point about James's story that nobody in the world knew, but they are able to prove now the evidence in. It's the mercury that was found on the Cartier wristwatch that was worn by John F. Kennedy the day that he was assassinated. That wristwatch went to Robert F. Kennedy, then went through his family. It eventually was sold for like $1 million in an auction. The title of the book by Christopher and Michelle Fulton, I believe, is The Inheritance. And it was the story about that wristwatch. But the bottom line was when they tested the face of the wristwatch and the band and everything, that had all these little silver specks on it, it was mercury. And James can illuminate that part of the story. But the Remington Fireball, here's the key point. They tried 222 Remington. It didn't work. They were made in many other cartridges with a different contour barrel, 22-250, 7mm BR, 223, 35 Remington later, and all that stuff. I have similar weapons in 6mm BR, 6mm Remington, 243 Winchester, and 7mm 08 Remington, but they have heavier barrels, okay? Well, they switched to the 221 Remington Fireball, all right? And there's this story out there that when James, after he shot Kennedy, he took the case out and he bit on it with his teeth, and then he put it up on the fence, okay, and left that. And years later, someone claimed that a 222 Remington cartridge, the spent brass with dents in it, was found right there on the fence. And I think supposedly the person that owns that particular piece of brass to 222 Remington today is a man that was involved with some of the early videos. He bought it, William Dankbar. And it was just a piece of brass that was found at the fence that had dents in it, and they claimed it was the one that they shot Kennedy. But the thing was, the pistol was not that James used was not a 222 Remington. It was a 221 Fireball. And also the real weapon that he used to kill Kennedy was at through marriage, a relative's house, Arnold and Kay Marbury. It was hidden under their bed. I guess it was their nephew. Their nephew was kind of a troublemaker. He stole the pistol and in the briefcase and got it out and took it out and was walking around the neighborhood shooting birds. And he was arrested for doing that. The pistol apparently and the ammunition were seized in Round Lake Heights, Illinois, back in the day. And I have an original copy of the arrest report. And the ammunition that was seized during that arrest was 221 Remington Fireball, not 220. Wow. So just to clear that up, the round used. And I recently, from the Remington archives, through a repair center that bought a bunch of, when Remington recently went bankrupt and they sold a lot of their stuff, I procured Remington XP100 serial number 1 that was used for testing and evaluation. And the barrel on it is a 221 Remington Fireball. So, I hope that puts it to rest.
And you cannot fire 222 through a 221.
That's right. It's not interchangeable like a 38 Special and a 357 Magnum. They don't interchange. The 221 Fireball case is too short, to fire. It won't fit in the chamber. It'll fit in the chamber, but it's too small, and they're not interchangeable. So you can't shoot a 222 Remington in a 221 Fireball. So we just wanted to clear that up because there's been a lot of questions out there. There's some people believe it was a 222 Remington. Some people believe it was a 221 fireball. This is the guy who fired the shot from the grassy knoll that killed President Kennedy. We're trying to get the truth out before he passes on. He has some health problems right now, and the confession video has been out there over 30 years. He's been judged as being a national security threat multiple times. They won't let him testify in front of Congress because of what they're afraid. If they give him immunity and he tells not just this story, but the other stories that he was involved in working for the agency for 28 years, that would resolve a lot of other high-profile assassinations and murders in this country. They don't want to let him talk in front of Congress, and it's a shame. I thought President Trump would give him immunity. We've tried to contact him and stuff like that. I had a buddy out west. I don't want to mention his name, but he knows President Trump's personal attorney, and he said he spoke to him. We just talked about this just about 3 days ago, and he told me he didn't think that President Trump would give James immunity from prosecution or let him testify before Congress because he just knows too many secrets about this country. And I think the original ledger that they tried to get, that was Chuck Nicoletti's murder ledger, it had something like 66 murders in it, one of which was John F. Kennedy. They kidnapped and tortured James to get that ledger, and he never gave it to him. And so I don't know. You want to make any comments about that?
They kept worked on me for about two and a half days, and when they finally passed out, they thought I was dead, and my ankles were taped together, my hands behind my back, my wrists, they were taped up. They threw me out in the garbage dump, and an elderly man and woman come out there to throw their garbage out that morning, and they found me there, and I was unconscious. So they called the police up, and they told them that there was a dead body out there in a garbage dump, and the cops come out there to get me, and they found a speck of life in me. They took me to the hospital, and as soon as they brought me around, I had them call my wife, notify that I'd been found. Had her notify Gorilla. He was my right-hand guy. He was like my lieutenant. He come pick me up, and the hospital didn't even want him to be carried out. But he said, no, I'm taking my boss home. He took me out, and he sit with me for the following week with a Remington Model 870 stamped on the saddle, law enforcement only. And he stayed there at my house for a week, guarding my body while I slept on the couch.
Wow.
And nobody get to me.
Yeah, the FBI wanted that ledger. In his original confession of an assassin, he mentioned that he knew where the original ledger was, and that they wanted it. And not only that, but the story that when it came out that he used the Remington XP100, and that the boy had been caught using it, shooting at birds, and it was confiscated, and the ammo was and all. They went to every Round Lake community or in the Chicago area, like 50 FBI agents looking for that Remington XP100. And wherever it was, whether the cops stole it or whether it had been, it's kind of a unique weapon, if it was in the, what do you call it? If it was in the
Evidence locker, that somebody had taken it. And you know how they do when after the probationary period for the right to file an appeal goes past, they don't just keep stuff forever in an evidence locker. Guns like that, sometimes they'll sell a batch of guns to a gun store to get the money so they can buy new equipment for the police department or something like that. So somehow it was disposed of. Maybe one of the cops stole it out of evidence. Who knows? But the original one, Remington XP100, 221 fireball, 10 3/4 inch barrel, Leopold, the old vintage 1963 with the arching letters Leopold, M7 3X scope, detach-o mounts that you could flip little levers and take the scope off the gun and put it back on with wooden stock. And it was specially marked, and I'm not going to mention how it was marked, but it had some markings on it that James put on it. And that's the original gun that was used to kill John F. Kennedy. No. Some of the other weapons used were rifles,
Right. So let me share this little clip. This is because James was talking about how he flipped his jacket in a railroad worker. There was actual railroad worker that was there that they got to testify. He saw the smoke from the grassy knoll, so he's going to talk about it right here.
Standing on the Elm Street overpass at the time of the assassination. We were alone with others. There was a group of employees from the Union Terminal at the time and 2 Dallas policemen. What did you see and what did you hear? As the presidential limousine was rounding the curve on Elm Street, there was a loud explosion. At the time, I didn't know what it was, but it sounded like a loud firecracker or a gunshot. And it sounded like it came from the left and in front of us, towards the wooden fence. And there was a puff of smoke that came underneath the trees on the embankment. Where was the puff of smoke, Mr. Simmons, in relation to the wooden fence? It was right directly in front of the wooden fence. I show you a picture published by the Warren Commission. It's Commission Exhibit number 2215, which is a view of the triple underpass area. If you'd be good enough to mark this pen with an X, the area where you thought the shots came from, where you saw the smoke. It was this area right here. After you heard the shot, you saw the smoke, what did you do? I was talking with a patrolman Foster at the time, and as soon as we heard the shots, we ran around to the wooden fence. And when we got there, there was no one there, but there was footprints in the mud around the fence, and there was footprints on the wooden 2x4 railing on the fence. Were you questioned by the Dallas police on that day?
So that's interesting. So there's probably been a lot of people that have over the years that have talked about this. I think this guy survived, and they questioned him again 20, 30 years later, and he gave the same story. But that's interesting. Was it muddy that day? Do you remember?
It was, yes. And I remember scraping mud out the bottom of my shoe on the bumper of a car that was parked back there.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned that before. Now, there was, like, when you were leaving, somebody was in a car that saw you, right? A woman?
Her name was Dorothy. I forget her last name offhand. She was worked for the book depository. She was on her lunch break, and she was down there sitting in the car eating her sandwich. And she seen me when I walked across there carrying the briefcase. She seen me take the gun out, and she scooted down in the seat and was peeping over the dash when I took the shot. And when I walked out, I looked at her, and she looked at me, and she didn't talk for many years after that. And then she talked to some of her people and family, because everybody that's been witnesses to the Kennedy assassination was dying.
Yeah.
I've got a picture of her, and somewhere around here, an 8x10, the lady.
Smart lady. Just keep on the down low for that. Maybe on the deathbed confession type thing. Now, that's interesting. She worked at the depository, but supposedly there's somebody up there taking shots, but she's down there eating a sandwich.
Yeah.
Do you think they're ever there? Now, Jim, you believe someone was up there taking shots?
Yeah, there was.
Yeah,
it was. We're and a lot of people that know about this are certain. It's the only fingerprint that was found on the boxes that, and it was Mac Wallace. He was LBJ's assassin. Some people think that the CIA or the government are going to right now, they're manipulating the paperwork and stuff so that they can blame the assassination on the LBJ. And also I've seen distractive, news online recently where they're saying now that the Grassy Knoll shooter was not James Files. It was the French assassin Lucien Sarti. Well, at least that would be admitting that there was a Grassy Knoll shooter. But since we know, and I know, from and all this evidence that an Operation 40 CIA assassin that was involved in, later in captured and killing Che Guevara was the Grassy Knoll shooter, and he's sitting right beside me right now. I don't need to listen to all these distraction stories that are trying to say, oh, everybody that was involved was dead. And If James hadn't been so young and had so much experience in Laos and with the Bay of Pigs stuff, and like you said, he wasn't like selected as the primary shooter right from the start. The CIA kind of said, okay, we'll get the mafia to do it for us, because, how could they possibly gamble, which they ended up doing anyway, using a paramilitary spy or a GRS guy today to kill the president of the United States and then find out that's why they're not telling us the truth, because, it really would probably be the end of the CIA, and it probably should change. But the people that did all this, they're all dead. The CIA over the last 62 years has changed so much from what it was in 1963. It's no reason. It probably needs some reorganization. Probably maybe the Title 50 killings maybe should be under the DOD and actually be given to Tier 1 operators. And no offense to James, but if I was going to pick today, not in 1963, but today, if I was going to pick somebody to assassinate President Trump, it wouldn't be a 21-year-old guy that had just a couple years experience. It would be a guy like you that was 45, who had been years in the CIA, years in SEAL Team 6, and would be the gray man. The gray man concept. That would be the guy that nobody would expect. Of course, nobody would expect a 21-year-old either. But back then, the guy's the top sniper in the Marine Corps back then, in his early 20s, Carlos Hathcock, and Chuck Mawini. They had already killed, like upwards of 100 people in Vietnam, and they were just kids in their 20s being snipers.
Well, if you go look at the Vietnam Veterans Wall, you won't find any old men hardly at all listed. Everything is young kids. From ages from 17, 21, 22 years of age. So the ones that died, they filled that wall up with over 50,000 names.
Yeah.
So, and if you would, the other thing too is like the Russians, some of their highest level assassinations recently have either been, a lot of them are in some kind of poisoning. And the last one, the really high profile one was, what was it? Polonium.
Polonium, yeah.
It's a radioactive material that, killed the guy over a period of time, not instantly. But, and, something we should digress a little bit and talk about two things. The big thing that caused Kennedy to make the statement that he was going to smash the CIA into 1,000 pieces and cast it into the wind was the request by the British MI6 to assassinate a general, if you will, Lord or Viscount, whatever the British call him, the World War II general Alan Brooke.
Mm-hmm.
And Kennedy told, well, you tell them what Kennedy told them about.
So we will not use that. You will not use the personality or the personnel or the weaponry or anything. So we want no part of it. And so a certain group of people went around Kennedy and they carried out the assassination.
And Kennedy found out about it. Yeah. And see, Alan Dulles was behind that. He came and brought the MI6 request to Kennedy, and Kennedy said no. And they went ahead and killed him anyway. Well, when Kennedy found out that he was behind his back and did it anyway, see, Alan Brooke was going to write, he wrote his autobiography, and it had two things in it that the British said that the Americans and they couldn't stand. One was, he had been a general in 45 in the end of World War II, but here it is about 1959 or 60, and he comes up with this autobiography, and he's going to write in there, one, that the British had broken the Enigma code at Bletchley Park for their counterintelligence, and they could read the Germans' mail during World War II, which helped them win the war. Yep. And that wasn't declassified until like 1974. But this is like 1959, and the British didn't want him to disclose this in his autobiography, but he was going to do it anyway. The second thing is he was going to write disparaging comments about what idiots Dwight Eisenhower, General George Patton, General Omar Bradley, that they were just idiots and they got a lot of Americans killed because they were not good field commanders and all that. And he was going to write a lot of disparaging things about the American generals. Well, the British wanted to kill him, and they figured the Americans would go along with it. And so when Alan Dulles decided to go around him.
And, yeah.
But Patton was killed too when he opened his mouth. There was a OSS, another CIA guy, a guy named Douglas Bazada, killed General Patton. That car accident that happened was like a false flag to kill him, and he actually lived through it and was
he survived it. And then they moved him to the hospital, and he was recovering great. And they put him down in the basement, and then he ends up dying. So probably poisoned him.
Yeah, he was supposed to be flown upgraded to a different hospital in Germany or something that day, and all of a sudden he just dies in his room right after the press left the room. He was sitting up in his chair smoking a cigar, talking to the press, and hours later he's dead. So that's the kind of shady stuff that goes on, and those are the kind of things that basically, Kennedy said no, don't do it. They did it anyway. So he wanted to destroy the CIA and basically turn it over, I think, to the DOD, or the intelligence and all this paramilitary stuff be run by them. And, if you, I don't want to get too far off the subject, but John Carrick, who recently had to go to jail over, he came out on the waterboarding and all that kind of stuff, and disclosed the enhanced interrogation program, all that walling and the hand slaps and the, all, the waterboarding, all that kind of stuff. And he got in trouble when they sent him to jail for a few years. But John was talking about recently about I think it was when they captured Abu Zubaydah in Pakistan. I believe a big yellow stucco house. They found where he was, and they got him. Well, he said literally less than a week before that, and he's like a smart analyst, CIA kind of spy guy who had no military experience, and his boss at the agency said, "Hey, I want to do a raid on this thing and get Abu Zubaydah," right? And he goes, "Okay, I want you to plan me a raid." And if you listen in the podcast, I think it was on either the Sean Ryan show or Danny Jones show. Really good interviews. I love listening to John talk about his CIA time. But they said, "We want you to do a raid," and they ended up raiding 14 locations simultaneously. And he said, he told his boss, "I don't know how to do a raid." And he said, "Well, you just figure it out." And you listen to how he ordered like $1 million. He asked for like $10 million and $1 million worth of bulletproof vests and guns and stuff like that, and just made up this plan instead of using like Delta or SEAL Team 6, guys that are, really. So they're still doing really amateur stuff.
Right.
It's CIA super secret stuff, but the guy's not even qualified to plan to do a raid. It turned out that they got the guy, but you could have probably sent in a high school football team and gotten him. Compared to that. You know what I mean? It seems like if you're going to do a tier 1 operation, that it should be done by pros.
Of course. But it's fascinating to me that James has survived all this time. So they beat him to death trying to get information from him, FBI, another corrupt 3-letter agency, and left him for dead in a dump somewhere. It's like crazy. He survives, and then so James, tell us a story about how they came to arrest you, and these 2 dirty cops basically were trying to shoot you, and you hooked them up. They found out.
Well, I can go back before that. They tried to hit me this time because I was on my motorcycle. They hit me so hard in the back end that they bent the frame. It was on with paper. Before I fall the hood, and they hit the back end of the motorcycle. I bounced up on the hood, over the windshield, and over the roof of the car, and landed in the middle of Route 41, I believe it was, or 45. And I called the cops. They come out there, and they told me, "Well, come in tomorrow and make a report on it." And so I had to call my uncle up to come with the trailer. We loaded the motorcycle up on the trailer and went back to the house. They told me, "Don't worry about it. You get on the best way you can." They drove off and left me standing there in the rain. And that was just one of the few times that they tried right before that. Then we had the shootout, and the 2 cops that come after me was about 30 miles from where they were cops. They were off duty, and they were in a plane car. They claimed they had flashing lights. They had no flashing lights. They was dressed in civilian clothes, but in all fairness, they did wear their badge on their gun belt. But they had the windbreaker on over that, and they covered that up. And so when this other cop arrived on the scene, he jumped over the one cop, which is David Ostertag, laying in the middle of Route 12, that had been shot. To go to the squad car, they said, and turn off the lights. So there was no lights to turn off. And you would go over the body to turn the lights on to control the traffic. And I can't see anybody that jump over a wounded officer of the law, even though they didn't know at the time he was a cop. He was in civilian clothes. You'd stop and see if the guy was still alive. But they jumped over him. They testified in court. They jumped over him and turned the lights on the car off. And none of it made sense. Another guy that testified against me, he was about 50 yards away from me on the highway out there from where he was in the car. And he said he seen me out with the 45, and he knew the serial number on the 45, and he repeated the serial number in court. But you know yourself, at 50 feet, let alone 50 yards, you got a hard time reading that serial number.
God.
You know, that was all done. It took the jury 3 minutes to find me guilty.
Wow. What the heck?
They had
What's
come
gonna
back
pay
and
off jury too?
they admitted that took them 3 minutes. They found me guilty, and then they ordered lunch, and they had lunch, and they come back for the trial. And I got 50 years. And a woman, that's one of the women on the trial that helped me, and the jury that helped convict me guilty, which was unanimous. She said they felt they didn't do me right. She said we took none of the evidence out of the box and looked at what they had said. They said, but we figured with so many officers of the law and so many prison guards standing around you, guarding you there, we figured you was guilty automatically. Anybody with that much protection or security should be locked up in a cage. Because I had like 12 officers altogether. 6 of them was carrying M16s, 6 of them was carrying shotguns, and they had me bolted to the floor. They made me look guilty right off the bat.
Tell them who wanted you dead.
Oh, Hillary Clinton's the one that wanted me dead. I blamed the CIA for sending somebody after me. And I sat down, I actually wrote them a letter, and I told them I was very disappointed. I thought I was worth a hell of a lot more than $50,000, that they should have offered to pay somebody $250,000 to come after me. And in the meantime, it wasn't even the agency, it was Hillary Clinton. And at that time, Bill Clinton was running for president, and I was the last one that could tie them into the runway and me in Arkansas to a plane load of drugs.
Wow.
And
No,
I
I can verify Hillary Clinton is bad to the bone. And when she came in, she was the head of the State Department. Of course, the State Department would give us GRS guys that were doing security. The State Department gave us our diplomatic passports, so that's how we can move and do what we did, and stay out of trouble. But she came in and she restricted them. So she was playing games with the CIA. So for a year, no one, if your diplomatic passport expired, you weren't getting another one. You couldn't work. So they were restricting the guys downrange, how many people could be downrange, and that's when Benghazi happened.
Well, I knew Hillary when she was a cheerleader, and she wasn't any good back then either. So,
yeah, she
I in the report
one time too, and she said,
when I landed the plane, the C-47, DC-3, whichever one you want to call it, with all the their civilian numbers. I opened the car door, the limo that usually picked me up and we'd go for lunch with a couple of the other guys, and there said Hillary. And I asked her, I said, what the hell are you doing here? She looked at me, she said, I'm just keeping up with your career. And I'm looking at the guy in the front seat, which was a captain of the Arkansas Troopers. She said, don't worry, I own him. I said, who the hell you want? You want Bill to kill me or you want me to kill Bill? And she laughed and she said, get on, let's grab lunch. So we went and we had lunch together. We sit there and we talked about some of the old days.
wow.
He grew up near Hillary Clinton.
He lived in Park Ridge. I lived in Melrose Park.
Yeah, Hillary's dad was an associate of the mafia, right?
Yeah, he was. They lived next door to somebody. I used to deliver an envelope to every Saturday morning if I was home and I wasn't on assignment for the CIA. I'd go over there and I'd drop off an envelope of money for this guy. He lived next door to Hillary's family.
Incredible.
Juice money from the mob to Hillary's dad.
So, so back to Lee Harvey Oswald. Why would they take one of your teammates that was very, like you said, he was brilliant guy. Why would they sacrifice him? Why did they do that?
Because he'd been sitting down and he had handed out anti-Castro posters and stuff in New Orleans there, and he got in a fight down there and a few other things. And also Lee Harvey Oswald, they groomed him to go to Russia and back to get Russians disinformation. And you know how that works. How did Lee Harvey Oswald get into the Soviet Union? Well, they flew him somewhere into the Netherlands, and he crossed over to Russia from there. And that's when he met the KGB's niece, and they got married. And when they got to come home, hell, the KGB, Russia, they paid, they bought the tickets for him to travel back to the United States because the government wouldn't pay for it because they wanted Lee to stay there. But nobody over there believed what Lee was telling them about the CIA and all the top equipment we had and stuff like that, which was disinformation.
Interesting.
And what's his name? The 9/11 project. Why did they fly his family out when all the planes were grounded that night? You would think they'd want to keep him there in case their son made connections with them or whatever. Nobody knew that he worked for the CIA.
Osama bin Laden.
Osama bin Laden. He worked for the CIA. He was
them all
the information.
Tim Osman.
Yeah, so same thing. So Osama bin Laden was working for the CIA and, setting up Afghanistan. Yeah. So I guess they do the drug trafficking, heroin thing. Yeah. And then he ends up in Pakistan, and we tracked him down there. I don't know if it was like another team or something. The CIA just let this other team take him out or what. And then some of my old compadres, I helped track him down where he was in that compound when I was, working GRS for CIA, and we worked with a doctor that basically, came in and got the tongue suppressors on the kids that got the DNA. Yeah. So they were like, okay, he's in there. And then it was my old SEAL team, kind of like, they couldn't get, guys like you to come in and assassinate him. They couldn't find him or whatever. So my old SEAL team, tier 1 guys, it was actually my old squadron. That came in because I talked to those guys before, and I was like, "Yeah, we got him down." It's like, "Yeah, we're going to go in and get him." And there's some situations that had happened that kind of delayed it a little bit, but anyway, they went in and got him. Was it really him or was it somebody else? Who knows? So it's crazy. So that's what they do. They use us and then they kill us. It's like what?
Yeah.
A couple of times it was Green Beret, I believe it was, that had Osama bin Laden in the crosshairs, and they were told to stand down.
Yep.
And they let him go. And
Pakistan, that's their highest their CIA equivalent over to get him.
They made them look like total idiots that night. And the SEAL team, they had the best pilots there was to get them into place. How do you hang the tail end of a helicopter up on a fence on the brick wall or on a wall like that? How do you have a team go in this 1 mile down the road is the enemy, and all this firing is going on? So we use suppressors on our weapons, silencers, automatic weapons. But the Osama bin Laden's people didn't have silencers. They had regular AK-47s. And they could hear them on the road. And they gave them plenty of time to get bin Laden out of there. Why was bin Laden standing in the middle of the room with his hands up and the AK-47 against the wall when his people came up the stairs? And a lot of shooting was going on. And why did they shoot bin Laden's wife in the leg when they thought she had a body vest on, a bump vest? When they shot the vest to kill her and they blow up the bump or whatever, they shot her in the leg. That's not going to stop her from pulling the string on the bump vest. So a lot of things didn't add up.
I like your
turned around. They said that she might have one on, but I don't think she had one on.
Well, we was telling yourself, anytime you go into the room to take out a terrorist, there's anybody like that, you pop them right in the forehead.
Yep.
You don't shoot them in the waist or in the body. You'd make damn sure you kill them instantly by hitting them in the forehead.
Yep. Get him in that T.
I trained with some of your SEALs. I trained with Green Beret. I trained with the SAS, and I trained with the SBS. And the SAS, as you know, is Special Air Force, the Special Air Services for Israel, and the
Right.
SBS, the Special Parts Service for Israel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So the mystique grows even more with you. That's incredible. So yeah, again, as people are watching this, they should see that you would be in our circles. You would be like, the guy we look up to. He's like done all this stuff. You'd be like the hero to us.
And you go back to Castro. I begged Phillips, I don't know how many times, let me go into Cuba. Let me go in there. I can get him. I know I can get in and get out, and I'll get the job done. And they would never let me go. And then I found out, I believe it was 1977, we was on our way to Chile to assassinate Castro, and he's giving a speech down there. We already had the guns inside the camera and everything else, and we had two young guys with us they were going to use. And he had appendicitis, and he had to be rushed to the hospital. So we took him there and turned him into the hospital. And so, trying to get the name straight, not leave it the other guy. He worked for the agency. I'll think of the name later. But anyway, he called me up to the side and said the operation's off. And I said, how can it be off? I said, let me take his. Yes, Michael Townley. He was the one. And he got me off the side. He said, oh, no. So if I was supposed to shoot the two guys that were going to assassinate Castro, I said, what do you mean? He said, we don't want Castro dead. He says, we want Castro alive. And I said, what do you mean you want him alive? And he told me. And then he started telling me about all the stuff that's going on in Cuba and about the heroin being processed there, and Castro's with us. And so the operation was called off. But the reason he was going to kill both the kids, he could jump up and say that he killed a couple of assassins trying to kill Castro. So he'd be a hero with the DNA or the DNI in Chile. With them, he saved Castro's life, and he'd be a hero with Castro and them in Cuba because he saved Castro's life. So that was the whole thing. That was just like when they flew in the abort team for Dallas. They didn't want that team aborted. Only if we blew the operation, then they could say that they saved Kennedy's life. They say, so we got wind of it, so we sent a special team in. Yeah. So they saved Kennedy. So they're heroes. They always covered their own ass, excuse my English, by saying that, we did this, we did that, we saved somebody, so we're the good guys. When they were the guys that stood up the operation, the whole thing. But they always had the team standing by to take the credit for saving Kennedy's life or anybody else's life it may be, whoever we're going to assassinate.
Hey, for the benefit of the audience that maybe has never heard this before, it might be a good idea. I'm going to preface it just for about a minute, and then let James, if he will, tell the story about from when the limo turned on Houston from Maine down to where he took the shot from the grassy knoll. And the couple things I wanted to say that for people that don't know, there was Charles Nicoletti was the shooter from the Daltex building, the second story. If you could bring the picture up, that James Altgene story, I think it says something like Charles Nicoletti shooting position or something like that. So people see with their own eyes the open window, the guy sitting on the fire escape right above the window, the spotter. And I'll let James tell the story, but I'll run through some of the key points, and then you can hear it from the horse's mouth about exactly what happened. But, about 2 weeks ahead of time, a guy named was Eugene Hale Braden.
Yeah, Eugene Hale Braden.
And he was the stepson, an adopted son or something like that of the Hunt brothers that owned the Daltex building, the oil guys. And they emptied that office out, and they told the people that worked in there that particular office was going to be renovated about 2 weeks in advance. So the Daltex building had already been selected. The change in the route that would be announced right at the last minute, where they went from Main Street, right turn on Houston, left turn on Elm, and then the shots are taken down there near the Stemmons Highway sign, in the short distance. This picture right here was taken right after the very first shot was taken, and you can see if you were to zoom in on the windshield of the Lincoln, the lead car, you can see Kennedy's hand up to his throat. And you can see that John Connally has turned 90 degrees to his right. He's been hit as well. So the first couple of shots have already been fired, and Kennedy's got his hand up to his throat, and the wristwatch ended up just seconds later being exposed and was splashed with mercury from the mercury bullet from James's shot. So this is, if you'll pan back, you can see in the background there's a man sitting on the fire escape on the Daltex building. Now, there are offices to the right where there's a wall between those offices. There's a bunch of girls, probably secretaries or whatever, looking out of that second-story window. To the left of that window, under the fire escape, is a window that's open about 14 inches right there. That's where the Charles Nicoletti fired from, and you can see he was in that office. That office was prepared 2 weeks in advance. And right above him, the spotter that's sitting on the fire escape, the guy's back in a position with the rifle in position to shoot straight down the street at that low angle to kill Kennedy. They were ready. So the spotter, they can't see the limo coming down Houston. So the spotter's saying, okay, he's turning on Houston Street. He's about halfway down. He's at the intersection. He's making a left turn. And then shortly before this photograph was taken, the limo and the car with all the Secret Service agents on it that were protecting Johnson, if you could pan back just a little bit, that old Cadillac, I think they called that the Queen Mary. That was the nickname the Secret Service called it. All right. You'll notice today in the Secret Service motorcades, all the vehicles, the limos, have the same license plate number. Okay, it's a Washington, D.C. plate. I think it's now today it's something like 800 and something else, like 800-202 or something like that, but they're all the same. So if somebody says, hey, he's in the car with this license plate number, well, there's 4 cars with that license plate number. All the limos have the same tag number. But anyway, so the shortly after this, almost simultaneously would have been the shot by Nicoletti out of that window, and then James firing the grassy knoll shot. But if people want to know how it happened, that's how it happened. And I'll let Jimmy tell the story at this point. And there was a guy with a radio to the left. There was a guy holding a black umbrella. I've asked Jimmy, hey, did you know about the guy that was going to be holding the black umbrella? No, he tells me he didn't know. It wasn't a signal to him. It likely would have been a signal. The driver was a guy named William Greer. He was not a Secret Service agent. He was a chauffeur for the Secret Service uniform division. The guy who was supposed to be driving that day was a Secret Service agent who had worked for the Washington, D.C. Police Department before he got hired by Secret Service. And his name was Agent Thomas Shipman. And apparently he was briefed on the plans to assassinate Kennedy. And shortly before the assassination, he backed out and he was killed at Camp David. And they wrote it off. You look it up on Wikipedia, it says that he had a heart attack. He was a young man. And they said that he had a heart attack on the couch there. But see, that was compartmentalized. It's not something Jimmy would have known about or Nicoletti. Or knew their part about doing the shot. So Jimmy's on the grassy knoll a little bit forward of the limo to the left. When he took the shot, it was 29.3 yards, about 88 feet. Where the fence is now, the shot would have been about 100 feet. It's been moved back, and it made the distance a little further. And I'll let him tell you the story at this point and kind of back up when they made the turn on Houston.
The best part, if you're going to explore like they claim Lee Harvey Oswald did, the perfect time to take the shot was when the car turned off on Main Street to make the right end turn over to Houston. He would have had a perfect shot at Kennedy, which is only a block away. And if you're a shooter, you're not going to miss a block away. Believe me. Shot would have got Kennedy right then. That was a perfect time for it, even if Mac Wallace was up there. But they waited until the car come down Houston. The only way you could see on Elm Street from there was to hang out the window to shoot down at it. Because from back behind the boxes in the room, which stacked book boxes, didn't make sense to me. Because even if you're a shooter, you got the boxes stacked there, blinding you, from shielding you from the public. You got to shoot through the boxes to get to your target, and you can't even see the target. So none of it made sense. And if you look at it and analyze it, it's like trying to set up a crime scene. You never set it up right. You always make mistakes when you try to preset a crime scene that you kill somebody and you want to make it look like burglars or somebody else did it. Now, there's always mistakes made. And their big mistake that day was waiting till the car got down the street. They should have taken the car out when it turned on to Houston off of Main. Then like Chuck had to wait till they got up Houston on Elm Street to start shooting. And that's
why do you think they waited, James, till it come to you?
Yeah.
You're the last shooter, right?
Right.
The
I don't
last
need nobody to tell me when to shoot because I know when I'm going to lose my field of fire.
Right.
I'm tracking in the scope, and I've got Kennedy in the crosshairs. Up until I took my shot, the limo never stopped. It slowed down to maybe 1 to 2 miles an hour. But after I took the shot, I didn't stand there looking out, oh, wow, what's happened? I went down behind the fence, and I'm putting the fireball in the briefcase that's behind me, and I'm cleaning up my area. I'm reversing my coat, and it took me 28 to 30 seconds to do it all. A friend of mine, Ron Fry, when he seen it, he went and he bought himself a jacket like mine I had, and he had a fireball in the briefcase, and he said out of him trying a dozen times, he said his best time was 28 seconds and reversing his everything and putting the fireball away and walking away from the crime scene. So while I was down there putting the fireball away in the briefcase, the limo could have stopped. That I couldn't say. But as long as they had the crosshairs on Kennedy, it never stopped.
Yeah, I want to also make a point that one of the researchers, I don't really consider myself, some big expert JFK researcher because I just tried to open the case when I was a trooper, and then years later got to meet James, and everything I know is from what he's taught me because he was there. I haven't read 100 books about the JFK assassination. If you have, you probably have the wrong opinion because I think most of the books, especially the worst one, is Gerald Posner's book, Case Closed, where all they do is regurgitate the Lee Harvey Oswald and 3 Shots from Behind from the School Book Depository story that the CIA wants to stick to after 63 years of lying to the American people. But the key point that that I really think should be made about the JFK case is one is that the CIA did it. They used the Chicago Mafia to be a couple of the shooters, but the mob didn't line up the change in the route. They didn't have the power to do that. The mob didn't have the power to take the Secret Service agents off the Lincoln and keep none of them riding on the president's vehicle, but they were stacked on top of Lyndon Johnson. They didn't have the ability to control what the Washington Post and New York Times wrote about it. They didn't have the ability to control what the Warren Commission wrote about it, who they, investigate, the testimony that they put in the Warren Commission and who got left out. Only the government can do this kind of stuff. And that's who killed John F. Kennedy. Our government killed John F. Kennedy, although James fired the last shot. The other thing, too, is if the time of death, because they always want to have a doctor announce the time of death, they said that they got him to the hospital and they put a tracheotomy in him and all that kind of stuff. And they were trying to resuscitate him. And he died at something like, I don't know, it's like 1:04 or something, a little after 1 o'clock or something. He was dead the instant that mercury bullet hit him in the right temple. He never took another breath. Half his brain was gone. I've put some pictures on there if you want to pull up the pictures that were some autopsy photographs. The Operation Zipper document is supposedly the entire document is 92 pages long. The first 5 pages are the Operation Zipper letter that we covered in a previous show. That proves that the CIA, that was Robert Trumbull Crowley, the deputy director of clandestine ops, saved that document to release it at the time of his death in the book Regicide. So JFK's hit in the right temple, and it blows his brains out. He didn't take another breath. He was dead, period.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So 33 minutes later, to make it official, but they said, oh, they tried their best to revive him and all. No, they didn't. They didn't do anything to revive him. They wanted him dead. So it was a successful mission by the CIA. They accomplished what they wanted to do. They used some mob shooters to do the job. Going back to digress a little bit, Lyndon Johnson and Kennedy had this huge argument at Love Field, and Lyndon Johnson wanted Ralph Yarborough, the liberal senator. He was a big pro-Kennedy senator. Stay on that picture. I'll come to that next. But they wanted Ralph Yarborough to ride with. I meant the other picture with the two killers.
Okay, J.D. Tippet. Yep.
The
shooter.
So, anyway, the bottom line was, if you could blow it up, that'd be good. But the bottom line was, Johnson wanted Kennedy to allow him to have Ralph Yarborough in the vehicle. He didn't want his buddy John Connally shot or killed, but they did want to kill two people. They wanted to kill Ralph Yarborough and Kennedy. And I think that Mac Wallace was part of the cover, and he was supposed to fire 3 shots from the school book depository. And I believe he was shooting at the person in front of Kennedy, thinking it was Ralph Yarborough. And that was the whole point of why Johnson, 1, to get Connally out of the line of fire, and 2, to get to where they could kill. But Connally had the injury to his right arm, and then the bullet went into his left thigh. And they said that was just the magic bullet that went through Kennedy and turned 90 degrees 2 or 3 times, then turned down through Connally's arm and then into his left leg. And then they were saying that they found that bullet, which is a pristine bullet with no marks on it, on a gurney, and that was the magic bullet. Well, the magic bullet, the real magic bullet, the one that was in his left thigh, was still in his left thigh in the hospital. It hadn't been removed. It didn't just pop out of his left leg.
Perfect.
Onto a gurney with no blood.
No rifle marks on it.
Would it have had Kennedy's blood on it and Connally's blood on it and some tissue? No. It's a pristine bullet. They shot into a water tank so that it matched the ballistics of the rifle they said was used, which was the 6.5 Carcano. People pronounce that Carcano, but that's not really correct. But the Carcano carbine, that bullet that it didn't have a mark on it, didn't say, so they could match the bullet with the rifle. And also that picture of Lee Harvey Oswald holding the rifle, holding up the communist newspaper in the backyard, that's so famous. That's Roscoe White's body, and Lee Harvey Oswald's head from right here on his chin, in the middle of his chin up, is Lee Harvey Oswald's head. The rest of that picture is Roscoe White. He's also a former Marine killer assassin that did some work for him. So. But anyway, this picture right here as you're looking at the picture on the left, but standing to Gary's right, is James Files. We just talked about this a little while ago. I'll let James talk about it, but there's a famous story about this, and I want James to tell it. But that guy on the right with the sunglasses on is Gary Marlowe, and they called him the Raven. He's the guy that actually killed Officer J.D. Tippet, not Lee Harvey Oswald. So Lee Harvey Oswald did not kill John F. Kennedy, and he did not kill Officer J.D. Tippet. So why don't you tell them the story about how that went down?
Well, that went down with the Raven, him and J.D. Tippet, because J.D. Tippet was with intelligence, and he worked with us in the Bay of Pigs fiasco. And so Raven and Tippet became friends down there. So I'm not going to say who ordered him in there because I don't know for sure, but he was brought to Dallas to do the cleanup detail on anything that needed to be. And so he was told to take Tippet out, and he wasn't there allegedly to take Tippet out. I guess he was there basically for Oswald. And Oswald wasn't at the boarding house. Oswald was already gone. So he's walking back to his car that he's got parked a couple of blocks from there. When Tippet drives by and sees him, well, they used to go out and drink beer together and have chili together. They were like, good friends. But Tippet got out. He never pulled his gun. He went over to shake the Raven's hand and say, how you been? And the Raven was 38 out, and he shot and killed Tippet. And that was how Tippet got killed, because nobody was supposed to know that Raven was in Dallas that day.
Hmm.
So he had to execute a friend of his, because you could talk about it or identify him as being there in Dallas.
Wow. Wrong place at the wrong time. So that's
Your own
a lot of
friends-
people say Tippet was
friends are
JFK.
sent to kill you. Even with the mob or the CIA, they send your friends after you. Somebody you trust, somebody that can get up to you.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's the real story, because there's all kinds of conspiracy theories on that.
Yeah.
So here's your book, Primary Target. We've talked about it.
Yeah.
How can people get this? And you're signing it. You put your thumbprint on it, your fingerprint on it. Pamela signs it as well.
Also, yeah, she's the author of the book. So I want her to sign it.
Pamela. Pam.
We'll bring out
For a minute.
Pamela, yeah.
They want to promote your book. You go ahead right here and
Yeah.
tell them exactly how they can order it and all the details.
Sorry.
You
Hi,
write
Pamela.
The website and all of it.
Well, if you want a signed copy of our book, Primary Target JFK, how the CIA used the Chicago mob to kill the president, with James Files' signature and thumbprint, plus I sign it. I put the date and then your name and then my name. Sign it, send it to you. You can get it like that, or you can get it from just authorhouse.com. But
Tell the website.
our website is JFK Murder, James Files, JFK Murder, James Files, JFK got murdered, James Files did it, JFK Murder, James Files .weebly.com. And that's for the signed copy. And if anybody wants the just the book without the signed copy, they can go to authorhouse.com. But
International sales.
Yeah.
Sales. Talk about
what's that?
international sales.
Oh, international. We're sorry that it's just too expensive to send it internationally. And if you want to get it, you can get it with authorhouse.com, and they'll send it out, and you just pay the appropriate shipping fees.
If anybody did want it international, bad enough, I would recommend to them that they should go to their post office and find out how much international shipping would be from the United States to their country.
Yeah.
And once they get the price, include that with the price of the book.
And they can put it in the donate support part of our website. But long story, if you just want a book, get it through Author House. Or you can even do the whole Amazon thing, just get it and read it. And people have it as a reference book. They love having it so that they have the whole story and they can reread it. And it is like a reference book, especially towards the end. When I put Joe West court case in there, so many things.
Joe West's court case, let me explain that, because he was trying to exhume the body. And
When
he
you
come to
were
visit me in
when
Stateville.
you were in Stateville,
And he come to see me, and we talked. And I told him, I said, you won't get the body exhumed because you're asking for it. You could have evidential reasons. I said, and I'm going to tell you, but this may get you killed. I says, but I used a mercury round on Kennedy, JFK. So you can tell him you want the body exhumed because you want to test the skull for mercury. I said, and when they dig it up, they'll find the body wasn't there. The body was buried at sea. I know for a fact. And so Joe West went to the hospital, and they claimed he had trouble with his heart, triple bypass or something. And he was doing real good. And his wife and daughter was there, and he wrote them a note. He couldn't talk. He wrote them a note, getting me out of here. They were trying to kill me. And there's everybody thinks we're trying to kill him. 45 minutes later, Joe West was dead.
anyway, yeah.
So if you, definitely want to support these guys. This is one of their primary means of, income through book sales, guys. So ideally, buy from them, or if you've already bought it, support and donate. There's a button there on the JFK Murder James Files project.weebly.com site. And that's in the description box. So you guys can, help these guys out, get a piece of history. And I just keep getting more information every time I pick this book up. It's just incredible, the amount of information. So you're covering a lot of stuff in this book, not just your information, but also I saw stuff on Barry Seal, where you're revealing, how he got into trouble, and eventually he testified, helped Ronald Reagan's administration out, and I think that's probably why they took him out.
Yeah.
Incredible.
The night they killed Barry Seals, he had in his wallet George Bush's home phone number.
How about that? Wow. Didn't help him that. Like I've been telling you guys, because they've tried to kill me too, on several occasions. CIA does not like for you to reveal stuff.
No.
You reveal anything on the CIA, and you're basically persona non grata, and you're going to have. They flew a helicopter and did the heart attack machine on me, and it didn't work out. But it's crazy. These guys, you think you're working for your country, working for the CIA organization, and they use you, abuse you, and then try and kill you in the end when they're done with you.
That's tying up loose ends.
The expendable elite, like Dangerous Dan Daniel Marvin said in his book. Expendable elite.
Absolutely. That's a good book too. Yeah, definitely. Good call. But yeah, there's lots of information. You guys, these heroes right here are, sticking their necks out there trying to, reveal stuff that could help humanity.
Yeah.
It does make a difference. I wish our government, because I think that President Trump is scared of the CIA. Everybody should be.
They can assassinate whoever they want.
Well,
Yep.
I had long hair until until Tony till my 80th birthday. Forget what year. 80th birthday, and I shaved my head so nobody in this area know who I am. This been kept pretty quiet and confidential.
Very good, smart man.
I wear that most of the time. I don't have long hair, and nobody can identify me.
Well, I shave my head because I don't have much up there anymore. But if I had your long locks, man, I probably would have kept them. But you had some amazing hair. So, but you do what you do, to survive, continue forward. And I, like I said, I appreciate you guys. All the information that you've been sharing with humanity. It's a shame that it doesn't get before some kind of congressional testimony. Man, you could reveal so much, and because we keep hearing how the Trump administration was trying to destroy the deep state. You could just you could be a massive destruction of the deep state if they got you up there. So I hope people listen to this, and people who have some cojones that can actually make things happen.
They don't want me to testify because I destroy a lot of it.
Once someone tells a lie, they have to live the lie.
Yep.
That's on the back of her book.
Definitely.
Saying that's what they believe, and that's what they enforce. Not that I believe that.
Well, I believe it because I put a lot of years in with them, and I know how they operate. And our history has been nothing but a lie.
Well, you've done a great job of revealing that. I thank you guys. Both of you guys are a great team, and you've definitely helped a lot. Jim Scott, thanks a lot for coming in. Your information, Jim, is in the description box too. I will continue to promote you guys as much as I can. I wish we could do more for you, but donate, buy the book, and you're gonna help somebody out that's trying to destroy this crazy deep state by revealing all the crazy stuff they've been doing. He is a true hero.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. It's been great sharing with you, and we look forward to sharing with you guys in the future.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you for having us on. Okay. I know.